Episode 1. The Two Rulers at South Harbour. The King and Queen of Jinhai. Our families arranged our marriage, unaware we rule the entire city. At 2 minutes past midnight, every light on Pier 19 went out. The cranes stopped first. Their red warning lamps vanished one after another until the great machines became black skeletons against the harbour sky. Then the warehouse lights died, followed by the lamps along the service road and the narrow line of bulbs marking the edge of the water. For 3 seconds, South Harbour was perfectly dark. On the 4th, men began to run. Zhen watched them from the roof of Warehouse 6 with one hand in the pocket of his coat. Below him, boots struck concrete, vehicle doors slammed, and someone shouted an order that was immediately contradicted by another voice. The confusion spread with impressive speed. It was not his confusion. His people had cut the power. They knew where to stand. Across the pier, 12 men in grey work jackets abandoned the lorry they had been unloading and scattered towards the freight containers. 3 carried short metal cases, 2 carried guns. The remaining 7 reached beneath their jackets as the emergency lights flickered on. Dim amber flooded the pier. Zhen counted weapons, exits, and distances. East Gate, Jinhai said through the earpiece. 4 vehicles attempting to leave. Let one go. There was a pause. Jinhai disliked incomplete instructions almost as much as he disliked untidy desks. Which one? The driver who checked his mirrors before the lights failed. Another pause, shorter this time. Understood. Zhen stepped from the roof. He dropped almost 4 meters onto the top of a shipping container. The impact rang through the steel beneath his shoes, but he did not break stride. 2 steps carried him to the far edge. He jumped again, caught the arm of a cargo crane, swung beneath it, and landed between the fleeing men and the East Service Road. One of them skidded to a halt. Who? The man recognized him before finishing the question. Recognition did not come from Zhen's face. Half the city knew the face of Zhenyu Systems, young president from business magazines, charity dinners, and giant screens in financial districts. The man staring at him did not see the polished executive who spoke about urban security software and efficient supply chains. He saw the black coat, he saw the stillness, he saw the silver clasp at Zhen's collar, shaped like a wave split by a single vertical line. His expression emptied. East King. Zhen disliked the title. He had never chosen it, and the people who used it generally wanted something, feared something, or were about to do something foolish. This man appeared to be managing all 3. Put down the case, Zhen said. The man tightened both hands around it. I don't know what this is. Then you won't mind putting it down. Behind him, a gun moved. Zhen heard cloth scrape metal. He turned as the weapon cleared its holster, caught the attacker's wrist and drove the arm against the side of the container. The gun fell. Before it reached the ground, Zhen caught it by the barrel and struck the first man across the forearm with the grip. The case dropped. 3 others rushed him. The first swung a steel bar at his head. Zhen moved inside the arc, caught the man by the front of his jacket, and sent him into the second attacker hard enough to lift both from their feet. The third tried to retreat. Zhen kicked the fallen steel bar. It spun across the concrete and struck the man's ankle. He went down with a cry. The entire exchange took less time than Jinhai required to straighten his cuffs. Men emerged from the darkness along the eastern edge of the pier. They wore ordinary black clothes, without uniforms or visible weapons, but they moved as one body. The Kanglan circle did not advertise itself. It did not need to. Zhen reached Zhen first. The north route is sealed, he reported. 9 detained. 1 escaped through the east gate as instructed. Follow at distance. Already done. Zhen glanced at him. Zhen allowed himself the smallest expression of satisfaction. Jinhai told me which vehicle. Then thank Jinhai. Zhen's satisfaction disappeared. Zhen crouched beside the metal case. Its locks were new, its surface deliberately scratched. A strip of yellow freight tape covered the original serial number. Nothing about it matched the lorry, the warehouse, or the paperwork his people had intercepted 3 hours earlier. He tapped the lid twice with one finger. Around him, conversation stopped. Open it, he said. Zhen took a narrow tool from his pocket. Before he could use it, a burst of gunfire sounded from the western side of the harbour. Everyone turned. The shots came in a tight sequence, 3, then 2, then silence. Not panic fire, not celebration, a signal or a very short fight. Beyond the stacked containers, white light flared against the sky. He Jun swore under his breath, Linjiang. Gu Zhen straightened. South Harbour had been neutral ground for 6 years. The east belonged to him, the west to the woman people called the West Queen, and the river between them belonged to commerce, tourists and city officials who preferred not to acknowledge how carefully peace had been arranged. Pier 19 stood on the eastern side of the agreed harbour line. That made the gunfire either an intrusion or an invitation. Neither possibility improved his night. "Secure the cases," he said. "No one opens them until I return." He Jun stared towards the western glow. "You're going alone?" "No." The commander waited. Gu Zhen started walking. "The person firing those shots will be there." 7 minutes earlier, Shen Lanyue had been enjoying herself. The evening had begun with a counterfeit customs order, continued with a lorry full of men pretending not to be armed, and improved considerably when one of them had looked directly at her and asked whether she was lost. Now that man was sitting against a stack of tires, holding his bleeding nose and reconsidering several of his life choices. "I asked politely," Lanyue reminded him. "You broke my wrist. After you pointed a knife at Tang Min." "It was a warning." "So was the wrist." Tang Min stepped around a man unconscious on the ground and offered Lanyue a folded handkerchief. "You have blood on your sleeve." Lanyue examined the narrow red mark crossing the pale fabric of her jacket. "Not mine." "That observation has never prevented your grandmothers from blaming me." "Only because you look responsible." "I am responsible, that is why I find it offensive." Lanyue smiled and accepted the handkerchief. The western loading yard was smaller than Pier 19 and crowded with refrigerated containers. Her people had blocked both vehicle exits with forklifts, trapping the false customs team before the harbour lights went out. When darkness fell, the attackers had tried to use it. They had discovered that Linjiang House knew the old harbour without lights. Lanyue turned the jade ring on her right hand once. It was pale green, plain except for a tiny crescent carved inside the band. Her grandmother had given it to her on her 16th birthday with a warning not to lose it. She had lost many things since then. The ring had never been one of them. "How many?" she asked. 15 detained, Tang Min said. 2 seriously injured, neither in danger. 3 escaped towards the central container yard. Allowed or accidental? Tang Min looked wounded. Allowed. "Where are Luo Xinyi's people?" "Following discreetly," she claims. From somewhere beyond the containers came the unmistakable crash of a vehicle striking a barrier. Tang Min tilted her head. Her definition remains ambitious. Lanyue walked to the open rear of the customs lorry. The cargo area contained 4 wooden crates secured beneath a grey cover. One had been forced open. Inside were compact rifles packed in dark foam. At first glance, they appeared ordinary. At second glance, they appeared expensive. At third, they became insulting. Each weapon carried a small silver plate beside the trigger guard. On the plate was an engraved wave split by a vertical line. The mark of the Kanglin circle. Tang Min came to stand beside her. "Rather obvious," she said. Painfully. "Shall I be outraged?" "Not yet." "Suspicious?" "Always." Lanyue lifted one rifle without touching the grip. The serial number had been filed away, but the work was careless. The oil smelled fresh. A genuine Kanglin shipment would not have arrived under counterfeit orders in a lorry driven by men who did not know which side of the Jin River they were standing on. The Aced King was many things. Wasteful was not one of them. He was also not stupid. That was inconvenient. Lanyue preferred enemies who made the effort to deserve her contempt. "Someone wants us to find these," she said. Tang Min's expression sharpened, and believe he sent them. "Or make him believe we stole them." "A war over 4 crates." "No, a war over what arrives after we accuse each other." One of the detained men laughed from the ground. It was a wet, nervous sound. He was older than the others, with a scar cutting through his left eyebrow. Lanyue had noticed that he obeyed orders a fraction too slowly and watched exits a fraction too often. He was not part of the crew. He was there to observe it. She stepped down from the lorry. "Something is funny." The man spat blood onto the concrete. "You think too much. People tell me that when they wish, I would think less. You've ruled these streets too long. You think every rat in the harbor belongs to you or him." "Not every rat," Lanyue crouched in front of him. "Only the ones stealing my customs forms." His eyes flickered. There it was. Tang Min saw it too. "The forms weren't public," Lanyue continued. "They were issued from a municipal office at 4:30 this afternoon, cancelled at 4:37 and removed from the system before 5. Your copies carried the cancellation code beneath the ink. Whoever printed them had access during those 7 minutes." The man's mouth hardened. "I don't know anything about forms." "You're right, you don't." She stood and looked at Tang Min. "The municipal clerk isn't their source. He's another loose end." Tang Min was already reaching for her phone. The scarred man moved. His injured posture vanished. One hand closed around the ankle of the guard beside him. The other tore a concealed pistol from inside his boot. He dragged the guard off balance and raised the weapon towards Lanyue. She stepped forward. The first shot passed behind her. Her left hand struck his wrist aside. The second shot hit the floodlight control box. Sparks erupted. Lanyue caught his elbow, turned beneath it, and drove her shoulder upwards. Bone cracked. He released the gun, but his free hand closed around her throat. For an ordinary person, the grip might have ended the fight. Lanyue smiled. The man's confidence lasted until she drove 2 fingers into the nerve above his elbow, broke his hold, and kicked him across the loading yard. He struck the lorry hard enough to shake the open doors. 2 guards rushed to restrain him. The floodlight control box hissed. Somewhere inside it, a damaged relay began to shriek. "Turn it off," Tang Min snapped. Someone struck the emergency switch. Instead of darkness, every exterior lamp came on at once, filling the yard with fierce white light. Across the harbor, shots answered. 3, then 2. Lanyue looked east. The power failure had concealed the far pier, but the sudden glare revealed movement on the roofs of the central containers. Figures in black, too disciplined to be the smugglers and too numerous to be harbor security. Kanglan. Tang Min followed her gaze. They crossed the line. "Perhaps. You sound unconvinced." "I am deciding whether tonight is too badly organized to be an attack by the East King, or so badly organized that he wants me to think it cannot be his." "And?" Lanyue removed her ruined jacket and handed it to Tang Min. Beneath it, she wore a dark sleeveless top that would not catch when she moved. "I'll ask him." Tang Min closed her eyes briefly. "Why do I continue expecting different answers? Hope is an admirable quality." Lanyue ran towards the container yard. The central yard was a maze built for machines rather than people. Containers rose 5 high on either side of narrow lanes. Some carried cars, furniture, or frozen food. Others were empty. Wind moved through the gaps with a low metallic moan, carrying salt, oil, and the first scent of approaching rain. Gu Zhen entered from the east at the same moment. Shen Lanyue entered from the west. Neither saw the other. They saw the bodies. 3 men lay in the middle of the lane. One clutched his knee. Another had been struck unconscious. The third was crawling towards a fallen pistol. Gu Zhen reached it first and put his shoe over the weapon. The crawling man looked up at him. "She's coming." "Who?" "The Queen." Gu Zhen heard rapid footsteps overhead. He looked up. A woman appeared at the edge of the container above him, silhouetted against the washed-out glow of the harbor. Her long dark hair had been tied high, away from her face. She wore black trousers and a sleeveless top, without armor or visible insignia. A jade ring flashed as she stepped into empty air. She landed on the narrow railing of the container below, balanced for a heartbeat, then dropped to the ground. The West Queen was younger than rumors made her sound. Gu Zhen had seen photographs, none reliable. In some she wore a mask. In others, the woman pictured was an assistant or deco. He knew her height, her reach, her preferred routes through the city, and the names of 6 people authorized to speak for her. He had never stood this close to her. There was something familiar in the way she looked at a room, as if every object had volunteered to become useful. He set the thought aside. She looked from him to the pistol under his shoe. "You've crossed the line," she said. "So have you. I arrived second." "That does not move the line." Her mouth curved. The expression was not friendly, but it was not the expression of a woman preparing for war either. "You must be the East King. You must dislike photographs." "I dislike photographers. They feel similarly." The man on the ground used their distraction to reach inside his jacket. Both rulers moved. Gu Zhen kicked the fallen pistol out of reach. Lanyue crossed the space between them and drove her heel into the man's shoulder before he could draw the second weapon. The force spun him onto his back. Gu Zhen caught the weapon as it fell. For a moment, he and Lanyue stood close enough to hear one another breathe. Her eyes moved to the gun in his hand. His moved to the ring on hers. Pale jade, a carved inner edge, old rather than fashionable. Something stirred at the edge of memory. A small hand raised triumphantly beneath a garden tree, green stone too large for its finger. Then Lanyue stepped away. "You're welcome," she said. "For kicking a man already on the ground. For preventing him from spoiling your coat." Gu Zhen examined the weapon. The serial number was intact. The magazine was full except for one round. "It's not one of mine." "I didn't ask." "You intended to." "I intended to ask about the 4 crates of rifles wearing your emblem." He looked at her. "How many?" "4. I found 3 cases carrying yours." The amusement left her face. Linjiang House used no public symbol. Within its inner circle, however, sealed instructions carried a crescent crossing a river reed. Few outside the organization knew it. Gu Zhen removed his phone and showed her a photograph taken on Pier 19. The case lay beneath amber emergency light. On its scratched lid, in fresh white paint, was Linjiang's crescent and reed. Lanyue held out her hand. "Closer." He gave her the phone. She enlarged the image, studied it, and returned the device. "The crescent is reversed." "I know. Then why mention it?" "To see if you did." Her gaze sharpened with something dangerously close to delight. "Is that how the East asks for cooperation?" "I haven't asked." "No, you crossed the boundary alone in the middle of the night, and showed me evidence your own people have not examined, very guarded. You arrived alone." "I'm faster than my people. Mine follow instructions." "How restful for you." Thunder rolled beyond the harbor mouths. The 3 men on the ground had become very still. None seemed eager to interrupt. Gu Zhen looked towards the southern end of the lane. "Your escaped men came this way." "They weren't mine." "The men who escaped you." "Better." "One vehicle escaped the eastern pier. It turned south." "Then either everyone developed the same instinct, or someone wants us in the same place." Finally, a voice called from above them, "Something you agree upon." The first bullet struck where Lanyue had been standing. Gu Zhen seized her arm and pulled. She turned with the movement instead of resisting it, using his momentum to swing behind the corner of a container. A second round struck steel, showering sparks. Gunfire erupted from both sides of the lane. The 3 injured men on the ground flattened themselves against the concrete. Gu Zhen and Lanyue stood shoulder to shoulder in the narrow shelter of the container edge. "Your invitation," she asked. "I was going to ask you." "That might be the most insulting thing you've said." He listened to the rhythm of fire, 2 shooters high on the left, 1 at ground level to the right, a 4th moving behind them. "Can you reach the upper walkway?" Lanyue looked at the gap. "Can you keep up?" She moved before he answered. The first attacker expected Shen Lanyue to emerge at ground level. Instead, she planted 1 foot against the side of a container, caught an exposed locking bar, and ran 3 steps upwards. Her fingers closed around the lower edge of the access platform. She swung over the railing as bullets struck beneath her. The shooter turned too slowly. Lanyue hit his wrist, drove an elbow into his chest, and took the rifle before his back reached the walkway. A second man fired from the opposite stack. She dropped flat, rolled beneath the first burst, and sent the captured weapon skidding away rather than firing it. Below, Gu Zhen stepped into the lane. He did not dodge the ground-level attacker's first strike. He caught the rifle behind the barrel and wrenched it sideways. The sling dragged the man with it. Gu Zhen drove him into the container wall, turned the weapon, and used its stock to block fire from the upper stack. Then he threw it. The rifle crossed the lane and struck the upper shooter in the chest. Lanyue reached him before he recovered. "Left," Gu Zhen called. She ducked. A knife passed over her shoulder. She caught the attacker's arm, but he twisted free with trained precision. Not a harbor thug, not hired muscle. He shifted his weight to strike again. Gu Zhen came up the access ladder without using the rungs. He caught the rail, pulled himself level, and drove both feet into the attacker's side. The man flew across the walkway, struck the safety barrier, and collapsed. Lanyue looked at Gu Zhen, hanging outside the platform by one hand. "Showy. Effective. Those are not synonyms." She caught his wrist and pulled as he swung over the rail. He did not need the help. She knew it, so did he. Neither commented. The remaining shooters withdrew towards the southern crane platforms. Gu Zhen glanced down. The injured men had disappeared. "Decoys," he said. "One may be the observer from my yard." Scar through the left eyebrow. Lanyue turned. "You know him." "He drove the vehicle we allowed to leave." "We? My people. I'm pleased you've already grown so inclusive." They ran. The walkway ended at a maintenance gap nearly 3 meters wide. Lanyue jumped without slowing. She landed on the far platform, turned, and found Gu Zhen beside her. Below, men from Kanglan entered the northern lanes as Linjiang teams arrived from the west. Both groups saw their leaders running together. Both stopped. He-Jun's voice carried from below, "Master Gu." Tang Min shouted at the same time, "Lanyue." The leaders did not stop. "Your people sound worried," Lanyue said. "Yours sound familiar." "They like me. That explains the concern." She laughed once, an open, startled sound that pulled at another buried memory. A summer wall, a girl balanced on top of it, laughing down at him after stealing the last hawthorn sweet from his hand. Gu Zhen's step faltered by less than half an inch. It was enough for Lanyue to notice. Tired already. Disappointed. Deeply. They reached the southern crane platform as the first rain struck. 3 attackers waited beside the control cabin. The scarred observer stood between them, his broken arm secured against his chest with a strip of cloth. Pain had stripped the mockery from his face. Behind him, a harbor maintenance vehicle idled with its doors open. "Stop there," he ordered. Lanyue kept walking. One of the gunmen raised his weapon. Gu Zhen kept pace beside her. "I said stop." "We heard you," Lanyue said. The difficulty, Gu Zhen added, was finding a reason. The observer's eyes moved between them. He had expected suspicion, threats, and perhaps violence between rivals. He had not expected them to arrive together. "This city has made you arrogant." "People who say that usually want it," Lanyue said. "You split Jinhai like children dividing a table, east and west, his roads your markets, his towers your docks. Did you think no one outside could see what you built?" "You're standing in my half of the docks," Lanyue said. "And arrived through my roads," Gu Zhen said. She glanced at him. Was that necessary? "Accurate." The observer's control cracked. "You think this is a game?" "No," Gu Zhen said. The quiet answer changed the platform. Rain darkened his coat and ran from his hair across the still planes of his face. The dry humor vanished. What remained was the reason armed men lowered their voices when they spoke of the East King. "Games have rules agreed by everyone playing," he continued. "You entered a city you do not understand, used marks that do not belong to you, and put weapons beside civilian freight. You are not playing." Lanyue turned her ring. "You are trespassing." Lightning flashed over the sea. The observer raised his good hand. The gunmen fired. Gu Zhen overturned a steel maintenance bench. Bullets struck it as he drove it forward. Lanyue ran behind the moving cover, planted one hand on its back and vaulted over. She struck the first gunman before he could adjust his aim. Her foot drove the weapon upwards. The burst shattered glass in the control cabin. She landed inside his guard, hit his throat with the heel of her hand and turned him into the second shooter. Gu Zhen hit the third. There was no elegance in it. The man weighed more than 90 kilograms and wore body armor. Gu Zhen caught him around the middle, lifted him clear of the platform and drove him onto the steel hard enough to empty his lungs. The observer ran for the maintenance vehicle. Lanyue saw him. "Mine," she said. Gu Zhen caught the second shooter's fist. "He left from my pier. He insulted me first." "Not a legal claim. You're adorable when you pretend to care about those." She kicked the shooter into Gu Zhen's waiting grip and sprinted after the observer. He reached the vehicle, hauled the driver's door open and froze. Tang Min sat behind the wheel. She smiled politely. "Were you looking for a taxi?" The observer stumbled back. He-jun emerged from the passenger side and seized his uninjured arm. Behind them, Kanglin and Linjiang fighters poured onto the platform from opposite stairways. They stopped within meters of one another, weapons ready, old hostility immediate. Gu Zhen released the unconscious gunman. Lanyue walked back through the rain. He-jun looked at her, then at his leader. Tang Min climbed from the vehicle and performed the same examination in reverse. "This," Tang Min said carefully, "appears to have become complicated." "It was already complicated," Lanyue replied. He-jun's gaze fixed on her ring before returning to her face. "Master Gu, give the order. We can remove Linjiang from the Eastern Harbour." Half the platform shifted. Tang Min's pleasant expression hardened. "You may attempt it." "Enough," Lanyue said. At the same moment, Gu Zhen said, "Stand down." No one moved. The two leaders looked at one another. "Your people are obedient," Lanyue observed. "They are confused." "Mine too." "Then explain." "You crossed into my territory." "We are east of the line." Lanyue looked towards the painted harbor marker barely visible, beneath the rainwater. It lay 6 meters west of them. She considered this. The line lacks imagination. Tang Min coughed into one hand. Gu Zhen looked at the scarred observer. "Who sent you?" The man smiled through pain. "Ask her." Lanyue crouched in front of him. "Poorly done." "What?" "You should have told him to ask me before we compared the planted weapons. Now it sounds desperate." The smile faded. She continued, "The customs documents came from city offices. The rifles came through an eastern logistics route. The vehicles carried temporary plates registered to a Longzhou leasing company. You wanted evidence pointing in every direction because you expected us to stop after finding the direction we hated most." Gu Zhen looked at He-jun, the escaped vehicle. "Abandoned 2 streets south," He-jun said. "Cleaned, except for a toll receipt from the Longzhou Expressway." "Also poorly done," Lanyue said. "Deliberate," Gu Zhen corrected. She glanced at him. He looked at the observer. "You were meant to be caught." Rain struck the steel roof of the control cabin like thrown gravel. The man's face revealed nothing, but the pulse in his throat jumped. "The shipment was a message," Gu Zhen said. "The escape route was another. You wanted us looking towards Longzhou after we nearly fought each other." "Why announce the place behind it?" Tang Min asked. "Because Longzhou is not a name," Lanyue said. "It is a field full of names." Hundreds of companies operated along the northern trade route. Dozens of families controlled pieces of its freight, finance, and shadow markets. Pointing towards Longzhou was like pointing at the sea and saying the answer was wet. The observer laughed again, softer this time. "You're clever," he said. "Both of you, that will make it interesting." He bit down. Gu Zhen's hand closed around his jaw before the movement finished. Lanyue caught the back of his neck. Together they forced his mouth open. A small capsule fell onto the wet ground. Tang Min crushed it beneath her heel without touching it. "Not poison," she said after examining the residue. "Probably dye or acid. something to destroy his teeth and make identification harder. Zhen searched the man's collar and found a second capsule sewn inside. He expected to leave alive, Zhen said. But unidentifiable, Lanyue finished. For the first time, fear entered the observer's eyes. Not fear of pain. Fear that the plan had failed in a way his employer had not prepared for. Sirens sounded beyond the harbor gates. Captain Fang's people were approaching quickly enough to be serious, and slowly enough to avoid surprising either organization. It was a skill developed through years of surviving Jinhai. Zhen looked at Lanyue. Take your crates and your prisoners. My prisoners? The ones from your yard. And him. He left from my pier. We discussed the weakness of that claim. No, you discussed it. The corner of her mouth lifted. Half the night, she suggested. Zhen stared at her. Tang Min looked delighted. Zhen considered the observer, the approaching police and the two armed organizations, sharing a platform barely large enough for one. Neutral location, he said. Neither side questions him alone. That sounds very close to cooperation. Temporary efficiency. Of course. Lanyue offered her hand. The rain had washed the blood from her knuckles. The jade ring gleamed beneath the crane lights. Again, memory pulled at him. A garden gate, a furious little girl holding out her scraped hand and demanding that he help her climb the wall she had fallen from. He took Lanyue's hand. Her grip tightened. For a fraction of a second, her expression changed too. She knew something. Or almost knew it. Then thunder rolled, the moment passed, and both released the other. Tomorrow night, Lanyue said, the old Riverside Theatre. Condemned. Private. Western side. By 11 meters. The line lacks imagination. Her smile returned, brilliant and dangerous. You do listen. Captain Fang Lei arrived at the southern platform to find no gang war, no weapons shipment, and almost no one willing to admit that anything unusual had happened. This annoyed him more than gunfire. Rain ran from the brim of his cap as he surveyed the scene. Broken glass covered the control cabin. Bullets had marked 2 containers. A maintenance bench lay on its side with dents deep enough to suggest it had been used to stop something traveling very fast. 23 men sat in orderly rows beneath the crane's shelter, with their hands secured in front of them by industrial cable ties. Between those rows stood Zhen and Shen Lanyue. Fang stopped walking. He knew Zhen by sight. Everyone did. He had also known for 4 years that the elegant young technology president and the East King were the same man, though proving it in a court required more than knowing. He had never confirmed the West Queen's face. Now the woman beside Zhen turned her jade ring and looked at him as though he had arrived late to a meeting she chaired. Fang's headache began behind his left eye. Mr. Gu, he said. Captain Fang. Fang looked at Lanyue. She offered a perfectly respectable smile. Captain. And you are wet. Tang Min made a small sound that might have been a cough. Fang breathed slowly through his nose. We received reports of automatic gunfire. Zhen looked towards the sea. The weather is loud. Mr. Gu, I have spent 21 years distinguishing thunder from automatic weapons. Then the report was unnecessary. Fang decided not to shoot one of the richest men in the city in front of 40 witnesses. It was not a difficult decision, but he resented having to make it. He pointed to the seated men. Who are they? Trespassers, Lanyue said. On whose property? She and Zhen looked at each other. That, she said, is under discussion. Fang followed the look. He saw no hostility. Irritation, certainly. Interest, unmistakably. Beneath both ran an alertness he did not like at all. For 6 years, Jinhai's uneasy stability had depended on the 2 strongest organizations, disliking each other just enough to remain on their own sides of the river. Seeing their leaders together should have reassured him that a war had been avoided. It did not. My officers will take custody of everyone here, he said. Naturally, Zhen replied. Fang narrowed his eyes. That was too easy. Would you prefer resistance? Lanyue asked. I would prefer evidence that remains where I find it. Then you should arrive earlier. Fang's headache spread. He walked towards the nearest prisoner. The man had bruising along his jaw, professional boots, and no identification. A careful search would produce nothing, because the people who had arranged the scene had already removed whatever they considered important. Still, one detail remained. The prisoner's jacket carried a dark smear beneath the shoulder. Not blood, grease mixed with pale blue paint. Fang recognized the color used on municipal service vehicles. He looked back at the couple. Gu Zhen was watching the smear too. So was Lanyue. All three understood that city property had been involved. None said it aloud. There will be questions tomorrow, Fang said. I have meetings, Gu Zhen replied. Move them. Family breakfast, he said. The answer was so ordinary that Fang momentarily suspected mockery. Lanyue checked the time. Unfortunately, so do I. Together. Both looked at him. No, they said. Fang watched them leave in opposite directions, each surrounded by people pretending not to belong to an organized force. He waited until they were out of hearing. Then he turned to his deputy. Find out who she is. The deputy looked towards the departing Western vehicles, the Queen. The respectable version. And the weapons. Fang looked at the empty lorry bays, the fresh tire marks, and the prisoners who had arrived carrying nothing more dangerous than bad explanations. Find those too. His deputy, Weibo, did not move. Fang knew the expression. It was the expression of a younger officer deciding whether honesty would damage his career more than silence. Say it, Fang told him. If that woman is the West Queen, we just had both of them standing in front of us. I can count to 2. We could have detained them. Fang looked around the platform. Police vehicles filled the eastern access road. Uniformed officers photographed bullet marks, separated prisoners, and measured the positions of objects that had already been moved. Beyond the tape stood 2 groups of supposed employees waiting beneath umbrellas. The eastern group wore Jinhai Systems security badges issued less than an hour ago. The western group claimed to work for a freight subcontractor, whose offices Fang suspected would exist by sunrise, complete with tax records and a receptionist. His officers had numbers, weapons, and legal authority. The 2 rulers had left without challenging any of them. That was not the same as being powerless. It was worse in a more complicated way. Detain them for what? Fang asked. Weibo gestured at the platform. This. Be specific. Illegal assembly, assault, firearms offenses, criminal conspiracy. Which firearm did either one possess when we arrived? Weibo looked towards the empty lane. Which person will state that Gu Zhen or the woman assaulted him? Fang continued. Which camera recorded it? Which seized weapon carries their prints? Which company owns this platform? The Harbour Authority. Check again. Weibo opened the property register on his tablet. His expression changed. Jinhai South Mechanical Services, a 30-year operating lease. And who owns that? Weibo searched. Haiyuan Shipping owns 40%. The remainder is held by 3 investment companies. By tomorrow morning, those companies will lead through 12 layers to people who have never met Shen Lanyue. She will say she came to inspect damage on property connected to her family's business. Gu Zhen will say his security company received an alarm from a client. Each will have calendars, messages, and witnesses. Then we break the witnesses. They are not frightened laborers being forced to lie. Half are licensed professionals earning more than you and me combined. The other half will tell the truth as they understand it. They arrived after an alarm, saw armed trespassers, and protected people from harm. Weibo's jaw tightened, so we do nothing. I did not say that. Fang walked to the row of prisoners. The scarred observer was not among them. Fang had counted twice. That meant the rulers had retained the only man likely to know anything. He disliked it. He also understood why the man might survive longer in their custody than in a municipal cell whose access records had already been compromised. That understanding annoyed him most of all. 6 years ago, Fang said, South Harbour averaged 3 armed robberies a week. Shops in West Jinhai paid 4 different crews for protection. The East had narcotics sellers outside secondary schools. We arrested people. Their replacements arrived before the paperwork reached court. Wei Bo listened. Then 2 teenage organizations grew up, Fang continued. They fought every crew that would not follow their rules, then fought each other until the river became a boundary. Robbery fell. Street dealing moved away from schools. Traffickers disappeared from routes they controlled. City officials called it an improvement because they did not want to admit who caused it. You make them sound useful. A locked gate is useful. It still becomes a prison if someone else holds the key. Fang looked towards the river. The 2 convoys were gone now, one east and one west. In the rain, the city seemed peaceful. Do not confuse order with justice, he said, and do not confuse our failure to charge them tonight with permission to stop looking. Wei Bo nodded slowly. Fang pointed at the blue paint on the nearest prisoner. Trace the municipal vehicle. Quietly, do not use the central access request. Because the system is compromised. Because whoever borrowed city resources wants to know when we notice. Let them wait. An officer approached, carrying a clear evidence bag. Captain, we found this beneath the maintenance vehicle. Inside the bag lay a brass button, stamped with a mountain above 3 horizontal lines. Fang did not recognize it. The button was too heavy for ordinary clothing, and too worn to have been planted with the new equipment. A dark thread remained caught through its shank. Photograph it and send the image to uniforms in Longju, he said. No description of where it came from. The officer left. Wei Bo looked at the distant gates. Do you think the king and queen found one too? If they did, they will already know what it means. And if they did? Fang watched rain erase a thin line of blood from the concrete. Then, for once, we may know something first. At 3:40 in the morning, Gu Zhen stood alone in the top-floor office of Zhenyu Systems. Jinhai spread beyond the glass. The financial towers of the east remained lit, their reflections trembling in rainwater far below. Across the river, the west rose in softer clusters around the university district and old commercial streets. From here, the boundary looked imaginary. Most boundaries did. Zhou Kai placed a tablet on the desk. He had changed into a dry suit and looked as though Midnight Harbor battles were a regrettable rumor started by less organized people. Preliminary inventory, he said. The cases contained ammunition, forged Linjiang documents and 3 ledgers. All are too obvious to be credible. Names. 6 companies linked to Western districts. 2 are real, 4 dissolved. Transactions point towards Linjiang House until examined closely. Then, they point nowhere. Gu Zhen looked at the map on the tablet. The vehicle. Leased through Longju. The company was formed 12 days ago using the identity of a dead man. Toll cameras lost the plate north of Jinhai. Lost. Zhou Kai adjusted one cuff. 7 cameras experienced maintenance failures within 14 minutes. Municipal access. Or someone wishing us to believe so. Gu Zhen leaned back against the desk. The West Queen reached the same conclusion. Zhou Kai became very still. You discussed it with her. Briefly. He Jun described the discussion as a joint assault across approximately 600 meters of harbor infrastructure. He Jun is dramatic. He Jun used 17 words. That is how I know he is distressed. Gu Zhen almost smiled. Zhou Kai picked up the tablet, then hesitated. You have never met her before. It was not quite a question. No, but... Gu Zhen looked west across the river. The laugh, the ring, the way she had offered a hand as though help were a command rather than a kindness. Find everything public about Shen Lanyue, he said. Zhou Kai did not react immediately. The founder of Lanyue Logistics. Yes. May I ask why? You just did. Zhou Kai regarded him with the patience of a man who had served too long to be easily dismissed. Gu Zhen tapped the desk once, stopped before the second tap and looked at his phone. 3 missed calls from his mother. 1 message from his father. 6 messages from his younger sister, the last consisting entirely of angry punctuation. And beneath them, a voice message from his grandmother. He opened it. Su Meifang's voice filled the office. Zhen, your mother says you are still working. I told her that if she knew how to bring you home, you would already be here, so she should stop pretending this is a new problem. Breakfast is at 9. Your grandfather Shen and grandmother Lin will come, and they are bringing you. You remember you, don't you? Of course you remember. You used to follow her everywhere even when you claimed she was following you. Do not arrange a meeting. Do not send an assistant. Do not develop a fever. If you arrive late, I will give your favorite lotus buns to your sister. Come home. The message ended. Silence remained for several seconds. Zhou Kai looked carefully at the wall. Zhen, he said at last. Gu Zhen set down the phone. You have work. A considerable amount. Begin elsewhere. Zhou Kai collected the tablet. At the office door he stopped. Shen Lanyue, he said, her family is close to yours. They were. And she will attend breakfast. Apparently. Zhou Kai glanced at the phone, then at his employer's expression. I'll have the public file before 8. After he left, Gu Zhen played the message again. Not all of it. Only the name. Zhu. He had not seen Shen Lanyue in 12 years. In his memories, she was 13, furious at being sent away for school and promising that she would return before he had time to miss her. He had told her he would not miss her at all. They had both been liars even then. Gu Zhen looked at the photograph from the harbour. The image showed only a pale jade ring beside the reversed Linjiang mark. He enlarged the ring until the tiny inner crescent blurred. Then he looked across the river, towards the woman who had crossed a boundary with him, and laughed like a girl on a garden wall. At 4:11, Shen Lanyue entered her apartment through the balcony door. Tang Min, who had used the ordinary entrance, was already sitting in the kitchen with 2 cups of tea. There is a lift, she said. There are cameras in the lift. They belong to us. That encourages laziness. Lanyue removed her wet shoes and walked barefoot across the dark floor. Her apartment occupied 3 levels above Lanyue Logistics, Western headquarters, but only the kitchen appeared lived in. A bowl of tangerines sat on the counter. 2 of her brother's engineering textbooks occupied a chair. Her grandmother had placed a red paper charm beside the window during Spring Festival and warned everyone not to remove it. No one had dared. Tang Min pushed a cup towards her. The old theater is being prepared. Joint access, no weapons inside, separate outer security. He'll bring weapons. So will we. Then the rule is balanced. Tang Min watched her turn the jade ring. You enjoyed tonight. Parts of it. You met the rival who has made 6 years of your life unnecessarily difficult, discovered someone is attempting to start a war, crossed into Eastern territory, and fought beside the man most capable of killing you. When you say it like that, it sounds irresponsible. I am trying a new approach. Lanyue drank her tea. It had gone slightly bitter. She preferred it that way and had never told Tang Min, who had noticed without asking. What did Luo Xinyi find? The observer's face appears nowhere useful. Partial prints match a warehouse break-in in Longzhou 9 years ago, but the name attached was false. One escaped man carried a card from a private clinic in Beiyuan district. Longzhou again. Again. Too often. Tang Min nodded, and the East King. Lanyue looked at her over the rim of the cup. What about him? Luo Xinyi has maintained a file for years. You have never requested it. I knew what mattered. Territory numbers, habits, roots. Yes. Not his face. Faces encourage assumptions. And now, Lanyue set down the cup. Now I have seen it. Tang Min waited. Lanyue disliked that kind of silence. It was a trap made from patience. Send me the file, she said. Tang Min did not smile. This was more offensive than smiling would have been. Lanyue's phone began to vibrate against the counter. Her mother's name appeared. She declined the call. It rang again. She declined it again. A third call arrived, this time from her father. Lanyue turned the phone face down. Then a 4th name appeared on Tang Min's phone. Tang Min looked at the screen and immediately held it out. Grandmother Lin. Lanyue answered before the 2nd ring. Grandmother, why is you awake? Because my granddaughter believes 4 in the morning is an appropriate time to ignore her mother. Lanyue sat straighter. I was in a meeting. Were you meeting the rain? Your mother says the tracking application showed you at the harbor. Tang Min became intensely interested in her tea. A vehicle had a problem, Lanyue said. Then you should employ mechanics. I do. Employ better ones. You will come to the Gu home for breakfast at 9. Lanyue blinked. The Gu home. Meifang is making lotus buns. Your grandfather Shen has something important to discuss with grandfather Gu, and Zhen will be there. The name landed more softly than it should have. Gu Zhen. How many Zhens did you torment as a child? He tormented me. Of course, that must be why you cried for 3 days when he moved to the Eastern District. I was 13. Yes, old enough to be very dramatic. Tang Min's shoulders began to shake. Lanyue turned away from her. Why is he coming? Because it is his family home. He hasn't attended a shared breakfast in years. Neither have you. Both of you have become important people with companies and calendars and no common sense. Tomorrow you will become children again for 2 hours and make 4 old people happy. The warmth beneath the scolding made refusal impossible. It always had. I'll be there, Lanyue said. Before 9. Before 9. And wear something warm, it will rain again. Yes, grandmother. Lin Shukin ended the call. Tang Min lowered her cup. You are you. Lanyue pointed towards the door. You have work. A considerable amount. Do it elsewhere. Tang Min rose, still fighting a smile. I'll send the East King's file. The moment the door closed, Lanyue opened the message. The first page contained a corporate portrait. Gu Zhen stood against the silver windows of Zhenyu Systems, dressed in a dark suit, his expression calm and unrevealing. Without the black coat, rain and violence of the harbor, he looked exactly like the respectable young executive described by financial magazines. He also looked like a boy she remembered sitting beneath a garden tree, pretending he had not saved the largest sweet for her. Lanyue read the name again. Gu Zhen, founder of Zhenyu Systems. 26 years old. Member of the Gu family. Eastern Jinhai. Her eyes returned to the photograph. No, it was impossible. The East King could not be her Zhen. The thought was absurd enough that she laughed. Then she remembered 2 taps against the metal case. As a child, Gu Zhen had tapped twice before doing anything he knew would get them both into trouble. Lanyue stopped laughing. Outside, the rain moved east across the river. In 2 homes on opposite sides of Jinhai, the king and queen stared at photographs of one another and waited for morning.